Hey everyone, Prophetic here. I'm here with Aleks, who is one of the main contributors for Yunohost. And I figured it's such a great project that I recently started using and wanted to kind of have him on to share a little more about himself, the project, and what makes it unique and special. And also, given the time of the year, see what's on the horizon or what's next for Uni. So, Aleks, thanks so much for joining, and wanted to just give you a chance to introduce yourself and what is Unihost and how'd you get involved with the project?
Okay, so I'm Alex. I'm currently basically one of the main contributor and maintainer of the Waynost contribution, the Waynost distribution. So the way I tend to describe Waynost is well, if you are a bit technical already, I could say it's a Debian based Linux distribution, which aims to simplify as much as possible the administration of a server. And so the goal is really that basically the idea of Windows is that everybody should be able to run his own server with a minimal set of technical knowledge required to be able to do so. And going a bit further, I would say, because it sounds kind of strange at first, because you say, "Oh, a server is really something technical. I don't know what a server is. It sounds very complicated, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure this is for me, or maybe what it actually corresponds to." But in fact, if you are used to deal with computers and the internet in everyday life, you probably interact with servers many times in your days. Every time you reach a website on the internet, you interact with a server. Or if you are playing games online, you interact with the server. If you are sending email, you interact with the server. And it's something that serves services, right? So, for example, having a website or browsing a website is a service. It's a service in the sense that you have a browser, an internet browser running on your computer, and your internet browser asks a server, "Give me some page."
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do with Yunohost is to take the notion of servers and make it as accessible to people, because if you take back, if you take a few step back from computers, for example, 1987, people didn't really know about computers. They would be like, okay, computers are something complex that only some engineers and researchers are used to manipulate. And the very idea that everybody could have a computer at that time was very obscure and strange, because people would be like, okay, but why would you give a computer to everybody in the streets? Or it would seem very strange, because computers were very complicated, and if you had to debug a computer in terms of electronics or softwares, well, just nobody could do this apart from researchers or engineers, because it was something very technical fundamentally. But some people started to try to create computers which would be usable by anybody. And so we are trying to do the same thing with servers, basically. Trying to make it simple to install applications on your servers, to deploy website, to deploy alternatives to Google Drives, alternatives to WordPress, or just be able to use your server to host your blog or your website, or to use your server to have your own email address instead of, for example, using Gmail. And that's not really easy, of course, because servers are usually administrated by people with quite a lot of technical knowledge.
Yeah.
And nobody really took this idea of trying to make servers easy to use. Nobody really tried to make that happen, actually.
With prevalent all those services are around us, with servers being around us, someone will want to have something that's like home based, but it looks like we've come to a place where we're okay with outsourcing those things and giving that job to Google, Microsoft, and whatnot. So my question to you is, why is it important for you guys at Yunohost to make it easy? When technically, if I really wanted a blog, I could go to Medium, or I can go to wordpress.com instead of .org and self-hosted. And what's the philosophical basis for why that's important, or should be important, for users to make servers like more accessible?
Yeah, so that's really the political aspect of the project, and why Yunohost is at core a very politically oriented project, in the sense that the main motivation is to try to decentralize the internet, in the sense that basically the vast majority of people contributing to Yunohost are convinced that it's not a good thing, that all the digital life of everybody happens to be centralized on Google or Facebook or Twitter or Microsoft.
Agreed.
So there's something big at stake beyond this fact that basically Google and Facebook knows quite too much about your life, and so the idea behind decentralization is that everybody should be able to control its digital life online, and that you should have some sort of control over where the data are stored, how does the service work, and yeah, so and the relation between this and the Yunohost project is really that currently you cannot really shame people to be using Google, because there isn't really any alternatives, right? There are a few alternatives, but it requires quite a lot of effort, because you need to find some alternative email hoster, but then that's just email, so you need to find some other platform that able to provide you with some sort of agenda contact management service, or Google Drive alternative service, and it's no easy thing. So the idea is really that with Yunohost, ideally you should be able to take any service that you are usually using through Google or Facebook or Microsoft or Twitter or any tech giant, and just be able to run it yourself.
What I liked about Yunohost, I guess, brand or branding from the website perspective, which is kind of like, interested me a lot, was the fact that, like you said, there's a lot of shaming that can go on in this space, but there's a fun, playful tone in the website and Yunohost and from the landing page. And was that by design, on purpose, to make it more accessible? Do you think that's more helpful and puts you in a better strategic advantage for making it more, palatable for users to kind of gain access to this kind of product?
It's interesting that you're saying that it's I don't know how did you name it, like a fun tone?
Yeah, it's fun, playful, because when you go to the landing pages, Yunohost, and it's like it kind of throws you this awkward question, and it intrigues you, and it's the colors, and it's simple, and it doesn't kind of give you a manifesto that shoves down your throat like, this is why you need to use these decentralized programs, and because a big corporation, it doesn't do that. At least that's not the leading in your face first thing, at least, which I think is
Mhm.
kind of smart in a way.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I mean, from the start, Waynost is a project where we regularly use the aesthetic of memes, because Waynost itself is based on the name Waynost itself is based on a meme. So it's kind of a bit playful, and I mean, you could say on one side we try to pretend we are going to save the internet, and on the other side uh, we are not really serious about it, because like we are just basically a team of volunteers, and we just kind of try to do something fun and useful happen, and so it's not really, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a positive thing in a sense, because we are not really like a big or a project driven by big money or venture.
Yeah,
How do you
venture
call it?
capitalists. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, but on the other hand, what is at stake is actually kind of important in a way. And a friend of mine told me at some point that, actually what Waynos tries to do is so important that the project should be as big as Mozilla Firefox, for example, because it's really,
I agree.
I mean, Mozilla Firefox basically is the only uh, kind of credible free software browser out there, compared to, for example, Chromium. And so if we really want to create an alternative which is scalable and really a quality alternative to what's proposed by the tech giants, well, we need a big project. We don't really. I mean, Waynost is just run by volunteers, and at some point it doesn't really scale because um, we don't have enough people working on the project, and so on, right?
No, that I think you're saying is fascinating because I agree. The urgency and the need is there, and I've seen other projects when they get too high and mighty, it just is such a big turnoff, And I think it's important to keep the psychology, because here's the thing: logically, yes, there's so much at stake, right? And yet, so people would logically conclude, like, hey, we have to ramp up the urgency, we have to ramp up the shaming, we have to ramp up the judgment, the calling out, the criticalness to call out people and say, hey, we got to start using more free and open source so alternatives. But then if someone is to say, and I tend to use this phrase too, like if you're truly logical about this, though, if you step back just a little bit more and zoom out just a little bit more, you'll see that to be truly logical, you have to account for the emotional nature of human beings and the psychology of human beings, and that it's illogical that humans are not logical. So you have to account for that in the communications, you have to account for that in the marketing and how you do it. And I just, whether intended or unintended, I think it's a good move, at least that there's an alternative out there that has a playful spirit, but yet still grasp the gravity and importance of being this type of to have this type of mission. So you have these amazing services that are like almost like pretty much one click deployments or really close to it with very minimal configurations. We have Nextcloud, you have syncthing, you have WordPress, you have all kinds of different smaller projects as well, that are really really powerful, well known, stable. What are some other cool things that someone can use Unihost for, and what are some of the things that you're looking forward to in the future with Unihost?
Um, yeah, but just let me insist on this because I really think is the key point, and it's I feel it's really important. Like you say, oh, you have this cool feature. It's almost one click, and yeah, it's almost one click. And actually, when you think about it, like when you are using a smartphone, for example, where you just install apps, right?
Yep, super important.
I mean, it just works. And smartphones, nevertheless, are really like one of the most complicated thing the human beings ever produced. Like it's like a big package full of complex electronics and complex software.
And it fits in our pockets.
And it just works, and you not really have to teach anybody how to use it because, well, okay, you kind of learn how to use it as you go in life, but fundamentally it just works, right? So what we're trying to do with servers administration and Yunohost is really kind of the same thing. Like, I'm really convinced that there is no explanation other than historical as to why server administration should be complex, right? I mean, it should just be like using a smartphone. You want a server?
100% agree. 100%
you just install a server, and do you need this and such app? Well, you just install it, and it just works. And there's no reason that it should be complicated. There's no reason that you should have some understanding of how the SQL database works, or how some web server works, or systems etc. Or I don't know, because in a smartphone, a lot of complicated things happens, and people don't have to know about it.
Exactly.
And I feel like I kind of have to fight in some ways in the first world, because the free and open source software community, well, it's kind of there are a lot of good people, okay, but there is also some weird culture about UX in general, and doing graphical interfaces, because somehow many people in the FOSS community are, well, we kind of all are nerds because we kind of like computers, okay?
Yeah.
But many people think that in the FOSS community, many people think that, oh, people should just learn the command line, and it just doesn't work. People are not going to learn the command line, and there's no reason that it has to be so complicated that just to install a WordPress, you should know about SQL databases and Nginx servers and PHP. And there's no way, and people have no time to learn this. So.
Or even port forwarding, the networking side of those things, which I think Yunohost does an amazing job at dealing with as well, with kind of spelling it out and handling that on the side. No, I agree 100%. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's good to hear, because I think we still have quite a way to go to make it even simpler. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's just the nature of the stack of, like, the hardware stack of networking, because you can't account for every single router in the world, and the nuance and configurations and where the menus are to make it universal. It's impossible, but you guys do pretty good job on the website and the explanations on how to get pretty darn close. Just for a second here, because I know we have limited time, but just with that point of, like, make the importance of making it a one-click install, like how that is so important, and it's almost like you're making open source alternatives, freedom caring alternatives, appliance-like, and in some sense that could be a dirty word, because we like to tinker and tweak and all that stuff. But I think you almost have to make an appliance like to make it accessible for the masses, because all of the neckbeards out there who love the command line and never ever going to let go, they have their cake and they can eat it too. But we're talking about a new generation of people who are growing up with technology, who have a totally different experience, totally different expectations. One person, and I'll leave it at this, would often say, like, if you don't know how to manage a server, you shouldn't be, like, if you're asking too many questions about server management, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. You should learn some more before you start trying. And I always felt kind of, it's true in theory, but when it comes to Yunohost, what I appreciate about that is there's nothing that can't be done to kind of almost harden it automatically with scripts. And because things are open source, you can verify things. And I just loved that I had a one-click install for Let's Encrypt for my domain. I was through the moon, because when I was doing my nextcloud install using Snap, for some reason, and using on an Ubuntu server, I couldn't get Let's Encrypt to get going. And because I have kids and family and all this stuff, I don't have all the time in the world to learn everything, as a lot of the people out there that you're talking about in the FOSS community, they can overemphasize the learning part. And I agree, learning is important. It's you never should be settled and trust everything like that, but you learn I like to say, you learn as you go, and you go as you grow. And so it's been a fascinating take to see, because I could see when I saw fail to ban being installed automatically when I was putting some stuff up, and I was just like, thank goodness they're thinking about these things, because one of the
of course.
Yeah, because you make it convenient. And you think you can, if you make it convenient, you're shortchanging something, or you're taking shortcuts when you make something convenient. And that's not true. You can make something convenient and accessible and still think about those important things like security and privacy.
Yeah, there is this big dilemma, or this big discussion of, but if it's easy, it's not secure, right? But yes and no. You can make quite a lot of things secure and easy at the same time. And actually,
WireGuard is a good example of that.
In fact, people sometimes say, I'd rather do it by hand, because then I know how it works and I feel like it's more secure. But actually it's not, because if you have to do it by hand, usually it's not as secure as some standard configuration that has been reviewed by an entire community, right?
Agreed.
And in fact, if you start talking about computer security, well, what I learned from all the work and time I spent in Yunohost is that Yunohost security is not trivial at all. And if you are doing things by hand, it's probably not secure at all, because there are quite a lot of subtle things. If you start learning about some security subtleties in Nginx, for example, the web server, well, there are quite a few things you need to take care of and be careful about. And if you are writing stuff manually, then you're probably not secure. And so if you want security and do things by hand, then you are going to need to have a lot of free time available, because you are going to need to learn quite a lot of things. But coming back to Let's Encrypt being one click, what we tend to discuss in Yunohost is that maybe one click is already too much. Maybe people should not even have to click the Let's Encrypt button. Maybe it should be
default,
even more automatical in some ways, but then it triggers more technical questions on how magic is a system, how much magic do you allow, because when it doesn't work,
everything won't work.
People are not even aware that they are using a Let's Encrypt certificate, and it triggers more questions and so on. But yeah.
Well, no, this has been great to highlight some of the aspects of the project that are really important, really special, and appreciate your time, Aleks. What what's some of the stuff that you're looking forward to in the next, I guess, upcoming updates or releases, and how can people help support?
Yeah, so let's see. Well, in Windows in general, there are a lot of things that are about um, keeping the things alive. Like, for example, we are based on the Debian distribution, and Debian releases a new version, a new major version every 2 years, basically. So in 6 months from now, Bullseye, the next Debian version, is going to come out, and we need to try to support it. I mean, historically, we have something like 1 year lag between the release of the new Debian version and the compatibility for Yunohost. But we are trying to reduce that gap, and we are trying to aim to be ready to support Bullseye in the next month after it comes out. And actually, we have a grant. We kind of have a grant for this, at least to help a bit. So instead of just doing volunteer work, so that's kind of nice. But that's not really the kind of stuff that is visible for users, because it's just about keeping the things alive and making sure that what works keeps working with the new stuff. So in terms of next features and midterm or long-term features, so we have, so now that I think about it, we kind of have quite a lot of fancy features that we are working on. So one thing is remote encrypted backups.
Nice.
So one important thing of servers administration is, of course, backups, because there are many ways that things can go wrong and you can lose data, and yeah. So one thing we want to have, and it's actually, we have this idea since quite a lot of time now, but now we also have a piece of grant for this, which is encrypted remote backup. So basically the idea is that if you have some friend who is also hosting Windows backup, then that friend can provide you with some backup space, and you can send automatically encrypted backups to your friend, such that if something happens to your server, you can recover from the backup, which is elsewhere.
That is killer, super killer. No, Synology
Yeah.
does that, and it's just a good point to say that. See, all the big companies, quote unquote, the big dogs in this space, they don't have to have all the cool features. You know, like usually it's the open source smaller projects that have the cool features that no one knows about, and then the big companies steal it, and then they make it a product and that kind of thing. But it's just really cool that you guys are thinking about that, because you know, they say with the backups.
You can actually already do it. It's called Borg, and it's currently two apps. One that you installed
Oh,
to
wow.
provide backup storage, and the other one that you use for the actual backups. But it's still an application, and you still have to install it and know about it in the first place.
Yeah.
So we are really trying to make it a core feature,
That's awesome. Yeah.
and trying to or using your friend server as a kind of a friend-to-friend stuff happening between servers. We have some other ideas in the same vein, kind of like federation, or so really go into more decentralized architecture. And recently we also introduced some diagnosis feature, and the diagnosis also works by querying some stuff to diagnosis.windows.org, which also brings more centralization, because the diagnosis is run every day and so on. So centralization, because we actually have some bugs, because diagnosis runs 2 times a day, each time at the same hour. And so it's like at 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. And so at 7 a.m., many servers do query diagnosis.diagnos.org over the course of 1 hour in total. But because so many servers query the server, the server is not able to answer everything, and so it times out and it creates fake negative results in the diagnosis because we have too many requests that we cannot handle. So if in fact you could query one of your friend's servers instead, well, that spreads the load over many different servers instead of a single server. And so we kind of have this kind of idea for multiple things. For example, if your server goes down for some reason because, I don't know, you lost internet or you lost power supply for some reason, well, then you could have your friend monitoring, is your server up, and sending you an email or some other notification to tell you, oh, your server is down, maybe you should do something and check something. So that's kind of what we call friend-to-friend of our federation. And so it's a bit more long-term idea, but we do have some piece of grant also, and I was aiming to work on this during December, but did not yet. So yeah,
that's interesting.
Other ideas, for example, we just continuously try to increase the robustness of the whole application ecosystem. For example, one example is, for example, when currently if you install some application, it may miserably crash during the installation because it turns out that you cannot install it on ARM architecture or because you're lacking system resources and so on. So we are trying to upgrade the format such that it can warn you about this in advance, for example, instead of just discovering that the install doesn't work on your server.
Awesome. That's awesome. So it sounds like you guys got some really, really cool decentralization features kind of in the works for the long term. You guys are still working on polish on the short term. That's incredible.
And we have also people reworking the web administration because we are using an old JavaScript framework. So we have some folk who did some rewrites using Vue.js. So maybe at some point you can install maybe at some point you will be able to install Yunohost, the web administration of Yunohost as a smartphone application.
Awesome.
Stuff like this.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Yeah, it really works pretty well on the web as is because I've done administration through my phone, and the way it adapts is pretty decent. Obviously, it needs some polish still, but it's still pretty responsive. I'm pretty happy about that. And
but one thing is that if you don't go too often to your web administration interface, for example, you may not realize that, for example, your server is not up to date because usually you just install a server and it just keeps working. So you don't really bother. I mean, it depends on people, but some people don't really bother about upgrading the system or upgrading the application. And so we need some way to send notifications, for example, to say that, oh, it's been a long time you did not do a backup of the server. Maybe you should do one, or maybe you should upgrade your server, or maybe I just discovered an issue because something broke for some reason.
Yeah.
So we need some way to send notification, and one way to achieve this is that if you have some application on your smartphone, then Yunohost could push notifications to your smartphone to tell you about something.
Well, that would be another killer to have that mobile integration for helping administrate it. Awesome, Aleks. Thanks so much for everyone who wants to help out with these. You just heard it. Decentralization, federation, the web UI, polish, upgrades, mobile integration, and hooks for notifications, and all the. If you find that you want to participate in a program that makes this stuff accessible and easy, then definitely head to yunohost.org. Check out the website. Scroll down, you see the different ways to connect. They're on Freenode as well. If you want to, that's how we met. That I was using my new shiny lounge IRC client on my server, and I just said, "Hey, this is awesome," and then we just started talking, Alex, and that's how we got connected on this. So it's just kind of really cool that literally it's that easy how we can use these services and connect. So if you want to participate, you can donate as well, especially at the end of the year. A lot of people are thinking about giving, so check it out, give it a spin, and yeah. Any last remarks? Any last comments you want to share before we let you go?
Yeah, it's really nice to hear that it works for you because well, when you are a developer of a project, you kind of spend 95% of the time knowing about what doesn't work. So
I hear you. Yeah, yeah, that could be daunting. Yeah,
yeah, it's really cool to hear that you're happy with how it works.
yeah, I am very happy, and I just want to. It's super important project. So please, everyone who's listening, check them out, participate, because I think it's we're long overdue for something like this to take hold, and I think it's true. A project like this could be on the trajectory of Mozilla Foundation, because the need is so great. So anything we can do to kind of help this thing scale for this important mission is really, 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 really great. So thanks, Alex. We'll be talking soon again, and yeah, I'd love to do this more often. Okay, maybe do like
Yeah,
the
sure.
state of Yunohost every once in a while, maybe.
Yeah,
Cool. You have a great one. Happy New Year, and we talk soon.
yeah. Cheers. Happy
Cheers.
New Year.